Netflix is overwhelming. We have all been there. You open the app, scroll for 40 minutes, get paralyzed by choice, and end up rewatching The Office for the 10th time. But if you dig past the reality television and the generic rom-coms, Netflix actually has an incredible library of thrillers. I am talking about high-stakes corporate espionage, claustrophobic single-room dramas, and gritty foreign action films that will absolutely ruin you for other action movies. I have done the digging so you don't have to. I have curated a list of the 12 best thriller movies you can stream right now. These aren't just content, these are tight, smart, and genuinely stressful films that demand your attention. Let's get into the list. We are kicking things off with a movie that I genuinely believe is an instant classic of the action thriller genre. Rebel Ridge dropped on Netflix with very little marketing hype, but the word of mouth has been explosive for a reason. Directed by Jeremy Saulnier, the guy who gave us the incredibly stressful Green Room, this film takes the one man versus a corrupt town trope and elevates it into something incredibly smart and tense. The premise is simple. Terry Richmond, played by a breakout Aaron Pierre, is a former Marine trying to post bail for his cousin. He is stopped by local police who unjustly seize his life savings using civil asset forfeiture laws. What makes this movie so special is that it isn't just a dumb shoot-'em-up. Terry isn't John Wick. He is a man who is desperately trying not to use violence. He knows the law, he remains calm, and he tries to de-escalate every situation. But the corrupt police force, led by a slimy Don Johnson, keeps pushing him until he has no choice but to push back. Aaron Pierre is mesmerizing in the lead role. He has this quiet, intense physicality where he can be terrifying without raising his voice. The action sequences are grounded and messy. It is not about flashy choreography. It is about grappling, joint locks, and non-lethal takedowns that look painful as hell. It is a masterclass in tension building, showing us that sometimes the scariest thing isn't a gunfight, but a man who knows exactly what he is capable of, trying his hardest to be patient. David Fincher is the king of the methodical thriller, and the killer is Fincher operating at his most icy and precise. Based on a French graphic novel, the film stars Michael Fassbender as an unnamed assassin who prides himself on being a boring perfectionist. He treats murder like a mundane corporate job. He checks his heart rate, listens to the Smiths to stay calm, and follows a strict set of rules to ensure he never gets caught. But when a routine hit goes wrong, his carefully constructed world begins to unravel, and he finds himself on a global manhunt to clean up his own mess. This isn't an action movie in the traditional sense. It is a process movie. We spend huge chunks of the runtime just watching Fassbender wait, prepare, and narrate his own internal monologue about the banality of evil. It is darkly funny in a very dry way. The movie deconstructs the cool hitman myth. He isn't James Bond. He is a gig worker who buys his supplies at Home Depot and orders generic tech off Amazon. The sound design is incredible. You are locked inside his head for the entire movie. When the violence does happen, it is sudden, brutal, and clumsy. There is one fight scene in a Florida house that is absolutely savage, proving that Fincher can still direct action better than almost anyone. If you like your thrillers cold, cynical, and meticulously crafted, this is a must-watch. This is one of the newest additions to the platform, and it is a throwback to the paranoid corporate thrillers of the 1970s like The Conversation. Relay stars Riz Ahmed as a fixer who operates in the shadows. His job is unique. He brokers high-stakes payoffs between corporate whistleblowers and the massive companies trying to silence them. He ensures the whistleblowers get paid and disappear safely, and the companies get their dirty secrets returned. He is a ghost. He never meets clients in person, using a complex system of relay calls and dead drops to stay anonymous. Riz Ahmed is fantastic here, playing a character who is hyper-competent but deeply lonely. The tension comes from the analog nature of his tradecraft. In a world of digital surveillance, he uses old-school methods to stay invisible. But when a new client breaks protocol, his entire system is compromised. The film is tight, efficient, and incredibly stressful. It builds a sense of claustrophobia as the net tightens around him. It explores themes of privacy, corporate overreach, and the moral gray areas of fixing problems that shouldn't exist in the first place. It is a smart, adult thriller that doesn't treat the audience like idiots, requiring you to pay attention to the details of the tradecraft. His House is a film that blurs the line between supernatural horror and social thriller, and it is devastatingly effective at both. The story follows a refugee couple, Bol and Rial, who escape war-torn South Sudan and make a harrowing journey to England. They are granted probation and assigned a council house in a rundown neighborhood. But as they try to assimilate and be the good immigrants the government expects them to be, they realize their new home is infested with a terror that might be worse than what they left behind. What makes this movie so brilliant is how it uses the ghost story format to explore survivors' guilt and trauma. The ghosts haunting them aren't just jump scares, they are manifestations of the people they lost and the things they had to do to survive. Wunmi Mosaku and Sope Dirisu give heartbreaking performances as a couple trying to hold on to their sanity, while the walls literally peel away to reveal nightmarish visions. The film is visually stunning, mixing the gray, drab reality of English public housing with surreal, colorful hallucinations of the ocean and the war. It is a scary movie, yes, but the real horror comes from the dehumanizing bureaucracy of the asylum system and the weight of the past that refuses to stay buried. If you love movies that feel like stage plays contained locations, dialogue-driven tension, and intricate plotting, you need to watch The Outfit. Mark Rylance stars as Leonard, an expert English tailor, or cutter, as he prefers to be called, who runs a shop in 1950 Chicago. His shop is a neutral ground for the local mob, who use a Dropbox in the back to communicate. Leonard keeps his head down and just wants to make beautiful suits, until one night, a mob enforcer stumbles in with a gunshot wound, dragging Leonard into a deadly game of deception and survival. The entire movie takes place inside the tailor shop. This limitation forces the script to be incredibly clever. It is a game of chess where Leonard has to use his wits to play different factions of the mob against each other, all while a gun is pointed at his head. Mark Rylance gives a masterclass in subtle acting. He is quiet, polite, and seemingly harmless, but as the layers of the story peel back, you realize there is much more to him than meets the eye. It is a twisty, turning narrative where the power dynamics shift in every scene. It is elegant, suspenseful, and features a script that is sharp as a razor. It proves you don't need explosions to make a gripping thriller. You just need great actors and a killer story. This is the Gen Z psychological thriller you didn't know you needed. It's What's Inside is a wild, stylish ride that mixes dark comedy with existential dread. The premise is fascinating. A group of college friends gathers for a pre-wedding party at a secluded estate. The vibe is already awkward due to old grudges and secrets. Then, an estranged friend arrives carrying a mysterious suitcase. Inside is a device that allows them to swap bodies. What starts as a fun, trippy party game quickly descends into a nightmare as old jealousies surface and people refuse to swap back. The film is visually dazzling, using lighting and color to track who is in whose body, but the real feat here is the acting. The cast has to play multiple versions of themselves, imitating each other's mannerisms and voices as they jump from body to body. It is a chaotic, fast-paced puzzle that keeps you guessing who is really who. But underneath the sci-fi gimmick, it is a scathing critique of identity, insecurity, and how we perceive ourselves versus how our friends see us. It is tense, funny, and deeply uncomfortable in the best way. It captures the specific anxiety of a friend group that has outgrown each other, but is forced to pretend everything is fine. Let me be very clear. If you are squeamish, skip this one. But if you want to see some of the most relentless, adrenaline-fueled action choreography ever committed to film, The Night Comes for Us is a masterpiece. This Indonesian thriller stars Joe Taslim as Ito, a top enforcer for the triad who has a crisis of conscience during a massacre and decides to save a young girl. By doing so, he marks himself for death, and his crime family sends an army of killers, including his former best friend, played by Iko Uwais, to take him out. The plot is simple, but the execution is insane. This is a horror movie disguised as an action movie. The violence is creative, messy, and absolutely brutal. Every prop in the environment, pool balls, animal bones, box cutters, becomes a weapon. The camera work is dynamic, throwing you right into the middle of the brawls. But what elevates it above mindless gore is the tragic relationship between the two leads. Joe Taslim and Iko Uwais are two of the best martial arts actors in the world, and their final duel is an emotional, bloody, exhausted fight that feels like the end of the world. It makes John Wick look like a Disney movie. It is pure, unfiltered kinetic energy. Calibre is the definition of a knot-in-your-stomach movie. It is a Scottish thriller that is grounded in a terrifyingly real situation. Two childhood friends, Vaughn and Marcus, head up to the Scottish Highlands for a weekend hunting trip. Vaughn is the straight-laced father-to-be, and Marcus is the reckless bachelor. While out in the woods, a tragic accident occurs. Vaughn shoots what he thinks is a deer, but it turns out to be a child. In a panic, Marcus convinces him to cover it up rather than call the police. From that moment on, the movie becomes a suffocating nightmare of paranoia. They are trapped in the small village with the locals, including the father of the boy they killed, trying to act normal while the guilt eats them alive. The tension comes from the inevitable tightening of the noose. You know they are going to get caught. The question is when and how violent the fallout will be. The film captures the isolation of the setting perfectly. The foggy, damp woods feel oppressive. It is a brilliant study of how one bad decision can spiral out of control and destroy lives. It is incredibly well acted and refuses to give the audience an easy out. It is grim, realistic, and unshakable. The Guilty is another high-concept thriller that relies entirely on performance. Jake Gyllenhaal stars as Joe Baylor, a disgraced police officer who has been demoted to working the night shift at a 911 dispatch desk. He is angry, dismissive, and clearly dealing with some personal demons. Then, he gets a call from a terrified woman who has been kidnapped. Since he is stuck at the desk, he has to use his phone and his computer to try and coordinate a rescue, piecing together clues from the background noise of the call. The entire film takes place in 2 rooms. We never see the kidnapping, the car chases, or the other cops. We only hear them. This forces us to imagine the horror, which is often scarier than seeing it. Jake Gyllenhaal is electric here. The camera is glued to his face for 90 minutes, capturing every bead of sweat and every micro-expression of panic. It is a stressful, claustrophobic watch that plays with your assumptions. Just like Joe, we jump to conclusions about what is happening on the other end of the line, and the movie pulls the rug out from under us in the third act with a twist that changes everything. It is a masterclass in sound design and a reminder of how powerful minimalist storytelling can be. Charlie Kaufman is the writer behind Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind and Being John Malkovich. So you know going in that this isn't going to be a normal thriller. I'm Thinking of Ending Things is a psychological horror puzzle that feels like a fever dream. The story seems simple. A young woman, Jessie Buckley, travels with her new boyfriend, Jesse Plemons, to his parents' secluded farm for dinner. She is thinking about breaking up with him, but as they drive through a blizzard and arrive at the house, reality starts to fracture. Characters change ages in the middle of scenes. The dog shakes itself dry for hours. The parents, played disturbingly by Toni Collette and David Thewlis, seem to loop through different stages of dementia and hysteria. It is deeply unsettling because it operates on dream logic. You cannot quite put your finger on what is wrong, but everything feels off. The film is a meditation on loneliness, memory, and the stories we tell ourselves to cope with regret. It is dense, metaphorical, and genuinely creepy. It is not a movie you watch for a clear plot resolution. It is a movie you watch for the atmosphere of dread and the incredible, unhinged performances. It will leave you feeling disoriented and sad, but you won't be able to stop thinking about it. Sometimes you just want a classic 90s courtroom thriller, and Primal Fear is one of the best ever made. Richard Gere stars as Martin Vale, a slick, arrogant defense attorney who loves the spotlight. He takes on the pro bono case of an altar boy accused of brutally murdering a beloved archbishop. The altar boy is played by Edward Norton in his very first film role, and it is the performance that made him a star overnight. He plays Aaron Stampler as a stuttering, terrified innocent who seems incapable of violence. The film is a perfect example of the genre. Twists, legal loopholes, secret VHS tapes, and corrupt city officials. But the reason it has stood the test of time is the dynamic between Gere and Norton. Gere plays the cynic who starts to believe in his client's innocence, while Norton gives a layered performance that keeps you guessing until the final frame. The ending of this movie is legendary. It is one of the greatest twist endings in cinema history. Even if you think you know where it is going, the execution is flawless. It is a reminder of a time when Hollywood made mid-budget adult thrillers that relied on script and acting rather than CGI. We are closing the list with a psychological horror masterpiece set during the Iran-Iraq War of the 1980s. Under the Shadow takes the concept of a haunted house and places it in a war zone, which amps up the tension to unbearable levels. Shide is a mother living in Tehran with her young daughter. Her husband is away at the front, and the city is under constant bombardment. As a missile hits their apartment building but does not explode, her daughter's behavior becomes increasingly erratic, and Shide begins to suspect they are being haunted by a jinn, a malevolent spirit carried on the wind. The brilliance of this movie is how it blends supernatural terror with real-world anxiety. Shade is fighting a war on two fronts: the spirits inside her home and the oppressive society outside it. She cannot just run out into the street because of the falling bombs and the strict laws regarding her dress code. The claustrophobia is palpable. The film uses the sound of air raid sirens and the whistling of missiles to create a constant state of dread. It is scary, smart, and deeply emotional. It is one of the best horror thrillers of the last decade because it grounds its ghosts in the very real trauma of living under fire. So there you have it. 12 thrillers that prove Netflix isn't just for background noise. Whether you want the bone-breaking action of The Night Comes for Us or the mind-bending puzzles of Charlie Kaufman, there is something here to ruin your sleep schedule. I'll be back soon with more hidden gems, so hit that subscribe button if you don't want to miss out. Let me know in the comments which one of these stressed you out the most. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.